S bar. And we use this as a weight, don't we? In our ham radio, did means weight. An AS bar together. A U bar, the German umlaut. No. X bar. Sorry. U. Z bar. Hi. Guess what? They ran out of symbols. So they invented some of their own. Now we were allowed to write them the way the actual symbol was constructed. We wrote that as what we call a tack line, TL. T, L. L backwards, of course. It's a Y with an E on the end of it. A tent, a side tent, and so on. I'll actually let you hear these a couple of times. Key, L backwards. Coup, sorry, rule. Tent. Shades of adolescence. Tent on its side. An adolescent standing up. C. O tail, O with a tail on the end of it. Query, not a queer, a query. Me, a long G. Shit. They used to make that if they made a mistake in a message. They used to go, shit. No, they didn't really. I'll tell you each time I'm telling a lie, right? Okay. This one's negative. It's an NO run together. We used to write it like that. It says F. We know this one. We use it as a fraction bar or oblique stroke. They use it as the sound mo. This is a long dash, we call it. It's what you did if you'd had an enema or syrup for figs or something. Co. And what we use for end of text, N. N. Guess what? They hadn't got enough. But here, Japanese cunning come to fore. Only 2 more symbols, all sort out. They have 2 other symbols, one called the niggery and the other called a hand niggery. And I'll never forget the niggery, because when I was being trained by a delightful civilian, I was always a bit of a wag and a bit of rebel, and I think my mates will say I'm still pretty much the same today. And at that time, Jack Benny, and do you remember the Negro Rochester? Jack Benny? And for the first time, he was a Negro who was allowed to be funny for its own sake and not an idiot. And he was absolutely superb, and I liked Jack Benny and Rochester very much. And when this civilian said, "This is a niggery," I turned around in Rochester's voice and says, "I ain't no niggery," like that, you see. And I got 3 days confined to barracks for that. And the poor fellow was very upset about this. He thought it was very harsh, and I said, "Not at all." I said, "What does it matter anyway? We've no money to spend," you know. And from then on, we got good pals, and he told me how he'd learned it and told me a lot of secrets. So how do the niggeries and hand niggeries work? Well, the niggery, I didn't point it out at the time, but they didn't use what we use as a letter I. They don't use it. They keep it for this thing called a niggery, and it's written like that. And they write it like that, and we wrote it the same. Then there was a nan niggery, but we call it hand niggery. But I notice in recent literature they call it nan niggery. And this is... And you write it like a degree sign, and how it operates is as follows. Let's take some examples. For instance, take a B. Says ha, but a B followed by a niggery, it hardens the leading edge of the sound. They're called diacritical marks if you're into languages, and it hardens the leading edge, so the leading edge becomes a B instead of a H. A C bar says sa, but a C bar followed by a niggery says za, the S takes on a harder sound. A D says ho, D niggary, bo, hardening it up. They only use the niggary and the hand niggary with certain letters or certain symbols. I don't know why, but they did. The nan niggary or hand niggary had the opposite effect. It softened the leading edge. For instance, if you got, it says he, but if you got E hand niggary, P, ho, says ho, D hand niggary, po, Z bar, hi, Z bar hand niggary, sorry, say it again. And you don't get many of them to the pound. Says pi. And if you get an E hand niggary followed by a D hand niggary, you get P in the po. I was telling Dave earlier on, I think it was Dave, that I was over at the Blossoms in Stockport a couple of years ago, and I said this, and a fellow got up and walked out. And I thought, my God, he's sensitive, you know, there's naughtier things to come. And I thought, I'm going to be drummed out of town tonight. And he came back and he said, I'm awfully sorry. He said, I was dying to pay a call, and I was wondering if I could last till the interval, when up you come with P in the po. He said, yeah, make it and quite true. So that's the system, and that's how it works. Okay, now then, if you like to get yourself some drinks in, we can have a little break now, okay? And then the guys can check their equipment and get your drinks in, and after the break, I'll explain to you what we did with all this and one or two little things about what happened, okay? In the first half, I told you about the training that we underwent, and the second half deals with what we did with this information and how it was used. There was only one place we were going, obviously having been taught Japanese, which is the Far East. And I'm reminded of a quick tale about, it was known, for instance, how vicious they were, how they behaved, and no one wanted to go out that way, and we knew we were going there. And I'm reminded of a fellow that had been called up into the army, and he feigned bad eyesight to try and dodge the draft. And the chap said, start with the letter at the top and read the letters. He said, what letters? He said, those. He said, I can't see any letters. You can't see those? No, I can't see those letters. He said, there's a doorway over there. Can you see the doorway? So he said, yes, I can make out a door. He said, if there's a man framed in the doorway, would you see him? Or he said, I don't think so. He said, if there were 2 men, could you see 2? I don't think so. 10 men? Oh, he said, there might be 10. He said, that'll do. Far East, they come in bloody millions out there. Now, during wartime, all navies maintain radio silence. For instance, if a sub comes up, we had a DF system that when he was drying out his antennas just by pumping RF into them, they had a fix on him before he even started his call sign and traffic. He was as efficient as that. So we have with us tonight Wilf, who was a Royal Naval telegraphist in World War II, served in destroyers, and he will verify what I'm saying, that you maintain radio silence. And they use a system called broadcast. And I have a little chart on the overhead projector to show you how it works. This was the area that we covered. It was the Far East, and we covered from what they now call Sri Lanka, where the trouble is, we call it Ceylon. We worked out of Trincomalee, but the listening station was down here in Colombo, and we worked right across this area. The Americans covered the other side, and we were listening on all the naval stations. When we got out to Colombo, we found that they just built the station, and the local planters, the rubber planters and the tea people, the colonials, were most upset because they dug up the golf course to put up a whacking great antenna farm. You know, there were Sturber curtains, V-beams, rhombics, you name them, they had them. And I'm reminded of the two Ronnies in those series where you saw them in the club, you know, talking to each other. And the colonials in those days had a reputation of rather peculiar behaviour, like wife swapping and all this sort of thing. And whenever I saw the two Ronnies, I kept expecting them to tell this one, but they never did. A couple of colonials sitting in the tennis club in Singapore before the war, and one says to the other, he says, I say, do you know that Ponsonby Smythe is living with an orangutan? And I said, good Lord, is he really? Yes. A female, I hope. Of course, there's nothing peculiar about Ponsonby Smythe. Having said that, I met some colonials when I was out there, particularly two of them, and they were very charming. So how does this system work? Well, the system that all navies use is a system called broadcast. And the broadcast system works as follows. For instance, these are Japanese coastal naval stations in World War II. And we say, for instance, that a message is originated up here.